Good morning and welcome to Rising. We've got a great show for you today. Robbie, what do we have?
Team Rising is here to weigh in on the San Francisco mayor's crackdown on crime in the Bay Area. And Insider's Dave Leventhal is going to do a deep dive into a month-long investigation into congressional violations of the Stock Trading Act. You won't want to miss that.
First, it's looking like the Grinch stole Build Back Better. Talks between top Democrats and Senator Joe Manchin are cratering, killing any hopes that the party's $2 trillion social spending and climate bill will be passed by Christmas. Negotiations began melting down after Manchin appeared to back out of an earlier deal with the White House to extend the child tax credit for 1 year.
Manchin discussed his qualms with CNN's Manu Raju, who says he believes the extension will last longer than 1 year and therefore the true cost is not properly reflected in the current proposal. Manchin said it should reflect the cost of a 10-year extension. Extending the child tax credit a full 10 years would cost $1.6 trillion over 10 years, according to the Tax Foundation, which would nearly equal the entire cost of Build Back Better. Other estimates have pegged the cost of 10-year expansion of the child tax credit at $1.4 trillion. So, I mean, Manchin, is getting a lot of, catching a lot of flack from obviously progressives who want this to pass, but he has been fairly consistent in saying, here is my price tag, and I don't want, all of this kind of gimmicky, we just do it all. Why don't we just do, it would probably make better tactical sense and arguably better even long-term strategic sense for keeping these provisions in place. Pick a few, generous new social spending programs, pass those and make them, permanent, not set to just kind of run out. And then they'll be more protected from the Republicans doing something in the near future, and Manchin seems like he'd be more on board. There's like a trying to do everything, and it's going to fail.
Yeah, and I said at the top that he had sort of previously agreed to this. I retract that. He basically has not. Quickest retraction in journalistic history. He never explicitly agreed to the 1 year thing. In fact, he was always making noises about this. And as we've reported on this show before, Rob Portman, who was a very, very smart Republican senator, dangerously smart for Democrats, and also amiable and friends with Joe Manchin. He was Bush's budget director, so he knows the budget in and out. And so he talked to Manchin all throughout the American Rescue Plan. The two of them teamed up on that unemployment, if you remember that little unemployment thing that almost derailed it at the very end. And he's been in Manchin's ear this entire time, talking about exactly what you're saying. Saying, like, look, it's a gimmick to say that it's only going to be 1 year. They're going to try to extend it. They say that they're going to try to extend it.
Right.
Of course they are.
Of course they are.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
And they would love to do it for 10 years. But then it becomes a question of what do they not do? Do they not do the child care subsidies? Do they not do the climate money? Do they not do the universal pre-K? And those are the big ticket. Or, here's one. How about we not do SALT?
Yeah.
So let's get rid of that.
Yeah.
But then you lose Gottheimer and the other, New Jersey and like rich people representatives from like New York and New Jersey. So, yeah, you can blame leadership at this point, but they're also trying to, do square pegs and round holes here.
Yeah.
So
they should just go all in on the child tax credit.
Or they'll just yank it all out, and then there'll be chaos, and then you come back and do another reconciliation package in 2022, and at that point the wheels are off, and
you're looking at things are just going to get worse and worse and worse for the Democrats.
The thing is, the thing that's interesting about Sinema's obnoxious role in this entire negotiation is that she took increases in the personal, individual income tax rate out, and she took increases in the corporate tax rate out. So as ridiculous as that is from a policy perspective, it also means there's an easy couple $1 trillion on the table from Trump's tax cut that is just there for Democrats to just turn the dial 2 degrees this way for the very top, and boom, you could fund the entire you could fund the entire child tax credit with that. But then Manchin would be like, well, wait a minute, we found other tax increases over here. I didn't mean raise more taxes. I want you to do less for people. And of course, the people freaked out about inflation is playing a role in that. They're like, in order to get inflation to come down, we need to take money out of people's bank accounts. And what the child tax credit does is puts money in people's bank accounts. So policymakers want to make people poorer rather than richer. And if you don't have money, you can't spend it. If you can't spend it, people lower prices. That's the theory.
Right, but I mean, the other theory is that spending so much money will make inflation worse, right? And then it won't matter how much it matters a little bit, but it offsets the fact that we're going to give you money, but the government's going to spend tons of money and the prices of everything is going to be out of whack, and additionally out of whack. The Fed's looking at doing something about this in the next year. They're going to raise interest rates.
Right.
Three times. I saw that yesterday. Yeah,
and it depends on how much of the price hikes are demand related, and how many of them are supply chain related, climate crisis related, opening of pandemic related.
Right.
So if you immiserate people, but you haven't dealt with those structural problems, and Mohammed bin Salman still wants to keep gas prices high just to screw with Biden, you're like, you immiserated people, and inflation is still going up. And then you get stagflation like we had in the 70s and 80s, which brings about 40 years of misery.
So much to look forward to in the coming year. The Beltway's politicos are assessing the failure of Democrats to pass the legislation. Eric Levitz is blaming Democratic leadership, Schumer and Pelosi for ignoring Manchin's demands, writing, quote, by attempting to enact all of Biden's social policies in miniature, Democrats risk permanently establishing none. That was the take I kind of agreed with. Adding that fully funding some version of the enhanced CTC and universal pre-K would be better than erecting a panoply of underfunded programs that are set to self-destruct by decade's end. Owen Higgins reflected on how Democrats' past inaction pushed their Obama-era base away and paved the way for Bernie Sanders and the left to garner support from disaffected Dems who didn't see the change Obama promised. I'm also interested the pivot to voting rights legislation, which was being discussed. Why on earth would they think they can get that done if they can't get Build Back Better done? Well, I truly don't understand.
Two reasons. One, Manchin was deputized to work with Republicans for the last several months on a version of a voting rights bill that they would be happy with. He got Lisa Murkowski to agree with some things. He talked to his other Republican buddies. He eventually has now concluded that there aren't 60 votes for it.
Shocker. Shocking. Wow.
He either needs
We need a fact-finding mission to figure that out.
And he let it, and he returned with the facts. It's not there. And so he's been meeting with moderate Democrats, and he's been under, he has said himself that voting rights are extremely important, and he wants to make sure the Senate works, that his highest priority is making sure the Senate works. And if those two things can't go together, if you can't get voting rights, period, because Republicans won't do anything, even the most basic things, then the Senate doesn't work. And then if you're going to make a carve-out for the debt ceiling, the argument would be you make a carve-out for voting rights too. Lo and behold, Kyrsten Sinema's got issues.
Well, but I don't know that those issues are wrong even from her perspective. Democrats are about to lose their majorities. So the more, why start chipping away at this is the wrong time to start doing, we're going to do all these exceptions for the filibuster.
The argument would be that voting rights shouldn't be partisan, that it is a right that you give to people no matter how they're going to use that right. And if you start to say, well, I've seen the polls, y'all aren't going to vote for us, so no voting rights for you.
I guess to play devil's advocate, I mean, everyone can. We're not extending the franchise to anyone here, right? Everyone can vote. We're making it easier for certain people to vote in certain circumstances, certain constituencies, which will end up benefiting Democrats. So maybe not.
Maybe not.
The Republicans end up being short-sighted sometimes about who votes for them. They're doing better and better with Latinos, not Latinxes. That doesn't exist. No one knows who those are. Yeah, the Latinxes are all voting for Democrats, but there's two of those. Right. Self-described people.
They're voting Green.
Right. They're voting Green Party. Jill Stein.
But yes, there have been studies that have shown that that Republicans benefited, say Pennsylvania, from mail-in balloting and some expanding of the franchise to irregular voters, because these are people who are inspired by Trump, who aren't otherwise participating in the process, and those are the kind of people that when you throw up all those barriers in front of them, you got to have your mail-in ballot notarized and witnessed, and it can only be Tuesday at 12:30 to 12:35 is the only time you can drop it off in front of a notary. Those are the kinds of people who are like,
Right.
Forget it.
Yeah.
Fine. I like Trump, but I'm not jumping through those hoops.
Right.
So
the teachers union member jumps through those hoops every time. There are some very concentrated Democratic Party constituents who their job is to vote for the party on.
And suburban voters are very good at voting.
Yeah.
They have their ducks in a row. So if Democrats are going to take the suburbs, or if they're going to lead, whoever controls the suburbs does better under voter suppression.
Right.
Interestingly, because it's very hard to voter suppress somebody who works from home, has all the time in the world to Google and figure out how to vote. Like they're gonna crawl over glass to figure out how to vote. So you're right. They might be shooting themselves in the foot. So we'll see. Sinema, seems happy to blow it up.
She's happy in general. The only person having a good 2021.
Yeah, she's having a good time.
Next, we'll tell you what's on our radar. Stick around for that.